Welcome, everyone. Hi, this is Telling Tall Tales the Right Way. I am your host, Heather Asianvi. I am a journalist, an editor, a writer. I'm also a certified master storyteller. And this series is taking what I consider to be all the elements of every great story, fiction, nonfiction, children's, adults, doesn't matter, and applying them to popular books as well as TV series and or maybe books that get made into movies, right? So that's what we're doing today. So today we have Leave the World Behind. Now, I think it was last summer, big movie on Netflix, caused a lot of discussion, right? And for good reason. This is not even like that dense of a book. Well, dense by meaning like it doesn't have super duper lots of pages. It is 241 pages. So it's not a small novel, but it's not, big and chunky. It's by Rumaan Alam. He wrote a book called Rich and Pretty, which I have not read, to be frank with you. I have not. But this book and the movie that it inspired caused quite a stir because there's a lot of topics like family dynamics, geopolitical touch points, survivalism, racism, how much trust can you really have in your neighbor, things like that. So those are some of the themes that are in here, but we're going to run through what the elements of every great story. So let's start there. Okay. The who are the characters? So this is a character driven story, despite the fact that like this big thing happens. It is a character-driven story. So we have the Sandford family. They are a white family who has rented a house on Airbnb out on, I believe it's Long Island, for the summer. They are Amanda and Clay are the parents, and then we have Archie and Rose are the kids. They have rented it from a family that they know is a Black family. But they're there for the summer, and they are having a pretty typical summer vacation out at this home. The kids are swimming. There's the parents are reconnecting after living in, I think they live in a brownstone or an apartment in New York City, in one of the boroughs, I forget which one. And they're having, this I would say idyllic, but there is an undercurrent. The way that the author has written it, that there is an undercurrent of tension. And I guess the reader, like as a reader, we could chalk that up to just being, they work a lot, they have their own careers, there's this, that, and the other thing. And they're raising teenagers, right, in America, which is stressful if you've ever done that. But then they notice some things are starting to happen. And the daughter in particular, she goes outside one morning and not just like a couple deer are in the yard, but like all the deer from the island, there's hundreds of them, are amassing in the yard, and then they start taking off. And she notices that animals are fleeing, birds are flying away. And if anybody knows that when the animals start going, you should probably start following them because they know a lot of things that humans don't know, right? Like we used to be tapped in to that more spiritual earth connection side of ourselves. And with modern day living, we've gotten away from it. But she kind of tells, but she doesn't really tell. And then the owners of the home show up, George and Ruth Washington, and they are a Black couple who, let's say if Amanda and Clay are around, let's say 40, 45, I would say that George and Ruth are probably in their 60s. So a good 20 to 25 years older than Amanda and Clay. And Amanda and Clay are immediately like, well, not Clay so much, Amanda. Amanda is the one who carries the the seed of distrust. And frankly, she's racist. She is racist. And so she is questioning everything. And they're like, something happened in the city. All the power is out in the city. We can't get a hold of our daughter. Their daughter lives somewhere else. Their communications are down. And the Stanfords are noticing that, their cell phones don't work. They had TV for a little while. Now that doesn't work. The kids' tablets are inaccessible. Phone, like nothing's working. They still have electricity out on the island where they at, Long Island. But in New York City, the continental United States area, I don't know how to describe it. They've lost all power. Anyway, it takes George and Ruth some convincing. Like it takes them a lot to convince Amanda to let them in the house. And they go down to like because the Stanfords are staying in the main part of the house. So like Amanda and Clay have the master bedroom. Their kids have guest rooms or like 2 other bedrooms. So George and Ruth go down to like the lower level, where like, I guess he has an office and all this. Anyway, that's who the characters are. Do they have distinct character arcs? They do. I would say that is one of the most well-written parts of this story is that, well, I need to back up a little bit because what is so interesting about this book, I'm looking at it, I should be showing it to you. What's so interesting about this book is that so much of it is internal dialogue with the characters with themselves. And obviously we know because we're the audience, but for the most part, this is an internal book. So it's about, Ruth thinks this thing, but she might say something else to George, or Amanda says one thing to Clay, but she is thinking something else, right? And so the way that works in the movie then is that the inner thoughts that these characters have come out as dialogue. So like Amanda's racism in the movie is a lot more in your face than it is in the book, because a lot of it in the book is internal. So I want to say that if you haven't read the book, I really, really recommend that you do. One thing too that I thought was great was so that's characters. Now the world in which this takes place. It is our modern world. Planes, trains, automobiles, cell phones, tablets, games you can download, movies you can stream, all the things, right? Hybrid cars, all the things that we know in our world as we're living it today, as I'm recording this episode with you, takes place. That's the world of Leave the World Behind. So all the characters behave with those characteristics of that world. So there's nothing that breaks those rules. Now, the conflict and resolution. This is kind of a big one. And the reason why is because we never actually, in the book, we never find out what the real conflict is. We never find out what actually happens. We don't know. And so there's this line again of foreboding that goes through the book, because just when you think we might find out, we don't find out. And so, and through the movie that Netflix did, it's much the same way. Something has happened. Something big has happened. And they don't know what it is. They don't know. But all these things start happening. Like Archie, the son of Amanda and Clay, his teeth start falling out inexplicably. Like, what? He dislocates his knee, breaks his leg. Something happens like that. I'm touching my knee like you can actually see me doing it. Anyway, okay. Anyway, all these things, it's unnerving is really what it is in the book. It's unnerving because you never find out what happens, but the author the way the author has written the story is it's, because I think Archie's like 15, maybe 15, and Rose is like 11 or 12. And they have a very typical brother-sister relationship, right? So that's cool. But what I found most interesting was the way the author would write it, like, Archie and his mom have a conversation, let's just say, about going back to school. But the author says Archie will never go back to school and his knee will never get better. He will never see those days. But we don't know if that's because he's going to die, or is it because this thing, whatever it is that has happened, is ending life as we know it and the characters know it. We don't know. For real, we just don't know. But because this overarching thing has happened, it does put into sharp relief the conflicts that are the smaller conflicts that are between Amanda and Clay. Amanda's has a much more high-powered career than Clay does. And even though he's super cool with it, he's like, he doesn't feel any particular way. He doesn't really have an ego about it. She's a little, like, I don't think this is an equitable kind of a situation, right? And it's clear that even though, his job is not as demanding, I guess, as hers, that most of like the childcare and all that still falls to Amanda, which, as we know, ladies, right? Like, that's something we have. If you are of a certain age, let's just say Gen X, for instance, or an older millennial, you may have also experienced this in your own relationship. And whether you've resolved it or not, it is there. And if you have not experienced this in your relationship, then I am happy for you if you have been able to get a more equitable partnership. But Amanda doesn't really feel that way. Archie is a typical teenage boy. He's like, meh, whatevs, right? Like, my family is here and I love them, I guess, right? And Rose is a little girl who's she's super curious. She loves science and she wants to know all the things. And then we have George and Ruth, the Washingtons, the couple who actually own the home. They are, because they are in their 60s, they have seen some things and they've experienced living in America as a Black man and a Black woman who they have to code switch all the time. They have to, unless they're around their trusted group of friends, which I assume from the way the story is written, that they hang out predominantly with a Black group of friends, despite George's kind of high-powered position. I think it's in finance or banking, which, as we know, is typically an old white guy's club, right? But I feel like their circle of friends is predominantly non-white. And so they have conversations that are just as intimate and fraught with tension as those between Amanda and Clay, except theirs are very, very differently focused. It's more about, we have to convince these white folks that we own this house. How are we supposed to get a hold of our daughter? We don't know where she is, our grandchildren, all of this sort of thing, right? And how can we coexist peacefully with these people if, like, this is going to be a long-term situation? Like, this is our house, but what if, like, at the end of their rental period, they can't go anywhere? Like, what do we do about that? And so Clay, so that's, that's part of the conversation between George and Ruth. Clay now has decided that he's going to kind of man up a little bit and go out and explore. Now, he doesn't know where he's going, right? It's it's rural and isolated where in this section of where they are. So he's driving. He's going to go into town. As we all know, when you go into town, that's where restaurants, grocery stores, hardware stores, stuff like that are, right? But he gets a little bit lost and he comes across now this is in the movie. He comes across this woman on the side of the road and she's hysterical and all she can speak is Spanish. She's not speaking English. And because we know how the world works, we can assume that she is either a domestic employee for maybe one of the richer white families in the area, or she is a migrant family, part of a migrant family. Either way, you can tell she's hysterical. And anybody who knows a smidgen of Spanish, which I know like beyond less than un poquito for real, you can hear her say things like about her son, and so she's clearly worried about family. And Clay, because he's so freaked out, he doesn't know how to speak Spanish. Number one, her hysteria kind of feeds his own. He drives away from her and he just leaves her. And so what the reader for the book and the viewer for the movie can take away from that is that Clay's kind of weak, man. He's a little bit weak, and he doesn't actually change that much throughout the course of the book or the movie. Anyway, so we don't know what happened. Nobody knows what happens. In the book, the way it's written is the situation gets exponentially worse with every chapter. Like I said, they lose electricity, then they it's one thing after another. Well, Rose, at the end of the movie, I don't want to skip ahead. Let's see. I'm trying to figure out how to describe this. So all these things are happening, and they're very weird phenomena, right? They're very, very weird. In the book, there is not a scene where fighter jets go overhead. I don't think there is. Let me look that up really fast. 1 second, because I want to make sure I'm getting that right. So do fighter jets fly overhead in the book? Let's see. Oh, they do. Okay. So there are moments. So when the characters hear like really loud booms, that's what it is. Oh, okay. Now memory. So they hear these booms. And so then they hear, they know that these are sounds caused by planes going overhead, but not commercial airliners, right? They are, the way the narrator describes them is that the noise is planes flying overhead, but not normal planes. It's presumably government technology that most people don't know have been invented yet. And so nobody knows, like, what is the country at war? Is something happening that's like natural, like a natural disaster? And so they hear that, but they don't know that that's what it is. It's only confirmed by the narrator, not by the characters having a conversation with each other, which is another thing too, right? Like the way that the author writes this, it's almost like he's the proverbial fly on the wall who also knows the things that we don't know, and he dribbles them out. It's a dribble, like that, right? Just to keep the page turning. I mean, I'm telling you, this is a gripping novel, and not in the sense where like these super overt things happen that keep you like, ooh, they're not jump scares, is what I'll say. They're not. It's just the psychology of not knowing what's happening, the psychology of, I'm showing you the back of the book, the front of the book. The general sense of fear that the characters begin to feel, that is what starts to grip you as the reader, right? So there's an interesting scene. So George worked with a local contractor, to rehab and remodel the house where this book takes place, at their home that they rent out as an Airbnb. And he feels like he and the contractor got to be friends. Like, oh, they exchanged a lot of banter. They exchanged information about their families. They, had lots of chatter and whatever. And so George is like, oh, Well, he could help us. So he and Clay drive over to the contractor's house. The contractor has his family in the house, and he comes out with a gun, and he's like, what do you want? And George is like, in the book, George's epiphany about, oh, we're not friends. Like, we are not friends at all. This dude is about saving him and saving his family, and he is not about to help us with anything. And in the movie, that is more explicitly stated, as opposed to just like getting Clay and George's observations and thoughts about the situation. So that is something that plays in the book and in the movie. Now here's where it starts to split quite a bit, because we're watching like the movie, right? You can't have these things just kind of, well, let me back that up a little bit. The fact that we never find out what actually happens, it doesn't really bother me. Now, see, most of the time that might bother me. Well, I guess it depends on the way the story is set up. So like, if you remember in season 1, we talked about, what's that called again? Where the Crawdads Sing, right? Yes, Where the Crawdads Sing. So I'm looking at my bookshelf over here so that I know, like, yes, Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. So in that book, she, like, we know this whole story, and then the last chapter kind of ruins the rest of the book for me personally, because we do find out like who done it, right? But in this book, we never find out what actually happened. There's a lot of supposition. There's a lot of the characters, like, what if this happened? What if that happened? What if? But it's never confirmed because communications go down. So how do you function as a society, or hell, as a family, with now the Washingtons and the Sanfords? They are effectively a family. How do you exist? How do you coexist? How do you fend for yourself? How do you, like, nobody's prepared for this. And so then, Rose, she's exploring stuff. She goes off. They think she's lost at some point. Then they find her. Archie finds her. This in the book is where Archie's knee goes out, and nobody can explain, like, why his teeth are falling out. Why is he injured? He's sick. They think he's going to die. All these sorts of things. And we never find out if Archie actually does die in the book. We don't know. Does he recover? We don't know, because we don't know what's happening. So there's no way for, as the reader, to be like, oh, he could get over that. Or, oh, if they did X, Y, and Z, then he could recover, right? There's none of that. So we don't know. So Amanda and Clay are their parents. They're super nervous and super scared for their boy. And then, George and Ruth are like, should we care about these white folks? Like, I don't know. And in the movie, there is all of that still. They load Archie into a car. They try to find a doctor. They can't. It's kind of a mess. And then Ruth goes out exploring again. Now, it turns out a neighbor of George's and Ruth's, and by neighbor, I mean they're probably like half a mile away, because these parcels of land are pretty big. Well, I don't know if it's half a mile. I could be exaggerating. Take that with a grain of salt. Anywho, Rose goes out and she finds out that a neighbor's house is empty. And she's like, oh, there's nobody here. And at the time, it's whatever. It's the summertime. George and Ruth don't live at their house except maybe here and there, right? She goes back home. Things are getting progressively worse, right? Archie's sick. He's not getting better. They're worried about running out of food, blah, blah, blah. When it becomes apparent that nobody's coming to the island, nobody's leaving, they just don't know what's happening. Rose ends up going to the neighbor's house and breaking a window, because winter's going to set in, and what are they going to do? They can't go anywhere. I think they drive a Tesla. Oh, that's right. In the movie, there's like an army of Tesla cars. They're like possessed or something. They're like self-driving cars. Anyway, that was like the only moment of levity in that whole movie. Anyway, but so they're not going to be able to drive pretty soon because they're driving electric vehicles, right? So at the end of the book, Rose goes over to the neighbor's house, breaks a window, and discovers like they have this whole like, I don't know if it's a pantry or cover. Anyway, they've got food to last for months probably. And so the end of the book, let me find it. Hold on. So, so she says, Rose says she'll go back. She knows she's being missed already. And then, she'd show them her bag and the things that she found. There's a house with a DVD player, 3 nice bedrooms. There's camping supplies and a pantry lined with cans. She's like, maybe their parents, I'm just going to read this verbatim because it's beautiful. Maybe her parents would cry over what they didn't know and what they did, which was that they were together. Maybe Ruth would empty the dishwasher and GH, that's George, would take out the garbage. And maybe the day would truly begin. And if the rest of it, something for lunch, a relaxing swim, those pool floats, catching up on a magazine, attempting the jigsaw puzzle, was unclear, so be it. If they didn't know how it would end, with night, with more terrible noise from the top of Olympus, with bombs, with disease, with blood, with happiness, with deer or something else watching them from the darkened woods. Well, wasn't that true of every day? That's how the book ends. The movie, however, makes it plain that New York City has been bombed by a nuclear missile, rather. And we know that because the characters are standing and they can actually see the city from like a break in the woods, and they see the mushroom cloud go up. That's how it ends. So I highly recommend, if you watch the movie, I really, really recommend you reading the book because it is so different. And I would love to know what you think about the difference between the book and the movie. Because I had these discussions with people on Facebook or whatever last summer where I was like, well, the thing is that so much of the book is internal again. It's like internal dialogue that they had to make it a little bit more overt for the movie, which, made Amanda maybe seem, I don't know, worse than she is, better than she is. I don't know. But anyway, so that's that. And so thanks for joining me and I will see you next week.